Howdy out there. This is Thursday, April 2nd, 2020, and it is just about 8:29 in the morning here in Northern California. And as usual today, I'll get into a lot of different stuff. Of course, coronavirus, novel coronavirus, COVID-19, or just COVID are some of the concerns we're all feeling lately. And I compiled a list of different diseases, viruses, bacteria, whatnot, viral infections. Excuse me, that's a smoker's cough, by the way. But, it was quite extensive and it was incomplete. But, any one of these things could have been grabbed on by the media and said, hey, you know what? We got to really freak out about this one. What I don't understand is why they don't, every time they tell about the deaths from this coronavirus thing, they don't show side by side the deaths from regular generic influenza, of which they've had a vaccine for quite some time now. I mean, you understand, I'm trying to reconcile this in my own mind because they're saying that this one is a lot more contagious, and that's the problem. And more deadly, I guess, so I'm not trying to poo-poo everything I'm hearing from the health departments, the CDC, et cetera. I'm just saying that, to freak out to the extent that we have over this one, I think is uncalled for. I think it's very important to educate people, but to also help people understand, like our governor here in California came out and plainly told people, hey, you know what, it looks like half of Californians are going to get this thing. And for most people, it's going to just be like a cold. That's it. So we should kind of expect to get coronavirus, basically. And once you've had it, you build up an immunity. So unlike the flu, which you can get repeatedly, I'm pretty sure, then, this one, hey, once you build up an immunity, then you're done with it. And the best advice I can give people is the advice I've given previously in other videos in the recent weeks. But that is, you've got to think of your body as a machine. And if you give it what it needs to fight an infection like this, you're gonna maximize your protection. You're gonna minimize your risk of being lethally infected by it. And that's why I try to give a little bit of advice of the stuff I know. And basically what it is, it comes down to a substance like cod liver oil. And this is not to be confused with fish liver oil, an entirely different animal. Okay, we're talking about a very old remedy. It's been known about its protective qualities, its anti-inflammatory qualities, the protection it gives the respiratory system. It's like a lubricant. And when you think of the engine in a car, we think, well, it's just gas goes in and it gets burned up, it gets exploded, right? I mean, I'm not trying to give a lesson on the internal combustion engine here, but it's really basically very simple. You've got a little area between the top of the piston and the top of the cylinder there. That's the cylinder head, they call it. And it's called the combustion chamber. And that's where a little explosion takes place and forces the piston down. And it's all done in sync with the camshaft. It's got lobes, so it's all done through ignition timing, and it's all nowadays it's very computerized, but it's always been very mathematic in the way it operates. You got to have a firing order, it's called. But inside there, from all these explosions, you can get carbon buildup. And when an engine gets old, on the top of the pistons, it's got these rings in there. Okay, they're called the piston rings. And they seal. They give an extra layer of sealing, and they allow for wear because they're kind of spring-loaded around the top. If you can imagine, very thin rings. You might have 2 or 3 of them generally. I've rebuilt motors, but it doesn't come to mind. But I know you've got at least 2 of them, an upper and lower piston ring. And you've got oil splashing up underneath at the bottom part of the piston. And it's lubricating the piston, rings, and primarily because the piston is hardly rubbing at all, it's slightly. It's the tolerances are very close inside the cylinder wall. The piston's going up and down, and it can get dry inside the combustion chamber from all those explosions, and the oil has to stay out of there, otherwise you'd be burning oil. So your spark plugs in that explosion, when it ignited, it'd be igniting oil, and you can't have cars burning oil. I mean, it's just, you can't have it. You'd go through a lot of oil, and you'd have a lot of air pollution. Cars would be very stinky if they were all burning a lot of oil. So there's different schools of thought on this in how to protect the internal components, where the internal combustion takes place, the combustion chamber in that area. It's just really a very small area, relatively speaking, because when the piston comes up, it kind of forces it. There's all this pressure, and the fuel is atomized that's injected into that area, and then the air comes in there. You got to have air to have an explosion, to have that explosion take place, oxygen, and so it explodes, and it just ends up very dry in that area, and that's not good because that will increase the wear. So there's a degree in gasoline, there's a degree of oil in there. Just naturally, it's a petroleum product, so there's a slight amount of lubrication, but it's not enough to prevent the carbon buildup. So this is the whole theory, one of the theories behind fuel injector cleaner. It's called fuel injector cleaner, but it actually serves the purpose of more than just cleaning your fuel injectors. It cleans the deposits in the combustion chamber, and if you use it on a regular enough basis, a good product like barium and chem tool, for example, it can be effective. But you got to think like your motor. You got to kind of get into the mind of your motor. What does it want? And there's another product out there that's been very popular for a very long, long time, and it's called Marvel oil. It's top cylinder lubrication, Marvel mystery oil. It's got a stupid name, really. But it's a product that a lot of people in the know trust. They think it's a good product. So you can add a little bit of that to your gas. They claim it won't hurt your catalytic converter because oil and gas is always a concern with the catalytic converter. You don't want to mess that up. It's a very sensitive instrument that superheats the fuel as it's coming out the tailpipe, and that gets rid of a lot of the unburned carbon that otherwise would come into the air. It's a very good. It's really helped cut pollution. But anyhow, I didn't mean to go into a whole spiel about this, but I'm trying to help you understand the similarities between understanding your body and the understanding of a motor and how it works. So what a lot of people will do, they'll put a little bit of this Marvel mystery oil in their gasoline, per the instructions. And the theory is that top cylinder lubrication gets in there where your motor oil can't get, where it's not supposed to get in the combustion chamber. And it's just a light oil that can improve your longevity, the longevity of your motor and the operation. I mean, anything that's the motor likes, it says, hey, you know what, this helps my rings so they don't get stuck, because you can imagine you get carbon buildup. The rings get a little carbon around them, and they're not springing as much because they spring. Like I said, they're made to wear. So an engine, lasts longer that way. Your piston rings have to be put on usually with a special tool because they are springy, very thin, but they fit around the top of your piston, and they're what rubs basically the most against your cylinder wall and creates wear. So you can see it'll help reduce the wear. And if you use fresh motor oil, you're minimizing the wear on that lower ring, the lower piston ring that contains the oil to where it's supposed to be in the bottom part of the motor. It's made to splash around under there, You got your oil pump and other mechanisms that splash it about, and it creates oil pressure, and it's all mathematically engineered to work, and it does generally very well. But your body is like that too, and you got to think of your lungs and what's going on with them. What do they want? And, our environment is far from perfect. I mean, in many ways, we all know we're inhaling various toxic substances. We know there's cutaneous absorption of toxic substances with you touch with your hand. So we're getting this stuff all the time. I mean, it's virtually impossible to avoid. I mean, and this goes way beyond the idea that, hey, maybe this is all a setup and we got evil people. They already have a vaccine. I mean, anything that doesn't go beyond your imagination is fair game. There's depopulationists, the Bilderberger group, the New World Order cabal, this element of people. They're all on board. They're in lockstep about this idea that the earth is overpopulated and we're the good guys going to save Gaia, Maya, Earth, and so we're saviors of the planet. So we're very important people that you all need. You don't know it, but we have to kill a lot of you. Not them, of course, because they're so important, right? But there is these people. You can look up the Georgia Guidestones and you can, see for yourself and understand. I'm not speaking a conspiracy theory. It's true. So the idea that they've had these planes up in the sky spraying these aluminum particulates, basically thermite, and, it's landing everywhere. And you got whole towns burning up, killing all kinds of people, like in Paradise here locally, Australia, for example. Then blaming you and I, we're destroying the climate with our carbon footprint. That's why we got to go, because you heat and cool your house and you drive a car and take trips, right? You have a carbon footprint inevitably. But in that conversation about the earth being too populated and we're polluting the oceans and everything else and we're running out of land, and it just, and to talk about poignant crap, I mean, that's where their heads are at. But, they all manage to keep their chins up and wear nice suits and be nice, well-groomed and all this crap, and they're happy to be multi-billionaires, and they're loving life. They love money. They've done very well, and a lot of them have been handed wealth. It's that same mentality, caliber of people that keep running the show. It's like perpetual aristocracy or something. And they're the feudalists. These are the top money lovers, and they have this advantage over the plebs, just the commoners, just regular people want to live and let live, right? Is that they don't value their conscience like us. Okay, and that's hard for a normal person to understand, but that's who they are. That's who is rendering us into what they want us to be and how they want us to think and feel and believe, that we can't live without them. They're the saviors, and they don't want you to ever be empowered and figure out really what's going on here and ask some hard questions like, whose planet is this anyhow? They don't want you to think for yourself, right? That, hey, can we get away from this? I mean, why do we all have to walk around with several sets of keys, pockets of keys hanging there and there, to here and there, to be lost and everything else to worry about, locking this and that? Okay, because there's a handful of petty criminals. So they influence our reality very much in a profound way, but it's nothing compared to these top dogs. And we're talking about who's in cahoots with them. Well, it has to be the top politicians. They need the approval of these people that are supposedly validating, legitimizing what they hand to the people as law, and say, hey, this is law. You break the law, you go to jail. You're a felon. This and that and the next thing. But they exempt themselves. They're above the law. They're too big to jail. You understand the absurdity? So we got criminal. The criminals class is running the show. And I like to expose that fact. And let other people know that, we're in a lot of trouble because of these people. They're genocidal maniacs. Basically, that's who's on top of this thing. That's who's manipulating us. And they have the power and the money. Remember, money is what's ruling things. It's what employs people in the mainstream media, the mass media industries. Okay, they dictate what they make a mountain out of and what they make a molehill out of. Do you understand how that has a vast influence on the public? And maybe there will be some good. I mean, God uses everything to his good here. So this whole coronavirus thing and what's happening in the economy, the direct correlation, we see that. I mean, hey, I'm a suspicious guy. I'm skeptical. I'm cynical, and for good reason.